Are you a highly paid professional that's looking for a huge tax break in 2026? Well, if that's the case, then today's video is for you because I'll be presenting an incredible tax loophole that allows you to buy a short-term vacation rental here in Sonoma County and write off up to 20% of that home's value in your first year of ownership. But before you start scrolling Zillow, here's what nobody will tell you. Many homes in Sonoma County no longer qualify to be run as short-term rentals. And if you don't know which homes can be run as short-term rentals, you're going to waste a lot of time and a lot of money making an uninformed move. I'm Stephanie Johnson. I'm your Real Wise agent here in Sonoma County, and today I'm going to cover what qualifies as a short-term rental, which properties here in our beautiful county can be used as short-term rentals, how the whole tax loophole process works, and what it actually takes to operate one, so stick with me. So first, let's quickly define what a short-term rental is, and that's a property that is allowed to be rented for 30 days or less. Now, a normal rental would require a lease that would be 31 days or longer, and often they're 3 months up to 12 months. And this distinction matters in terms of the tax consequences, because if you buy a home that you rent out to just a normal tenant, the passive loss limits do not allow you to write off the same amount of money in the first year you own it as if you own a short-term rental. Unless you qualify as what's called a real estate professional, meaning a real estate agent, a property manager, or a full-time investor, you don't qualify for this tax benefit on a normal rental property. So for professionals who have a full-time job doing something else, you can't possibly qualify as a real estate professional, but this tax loophole for short-term rentals only can be applied to you. If you materially participate in the running of that property, then the IRS classifies that investment as a business rather than a real estate investment. That's the door that allows high-income professionals that have other jobs to write off the tax deduction against their earned income instead of just saving it to write off against earned rents in the future. So how does the tax loophole work exactly? Well, I'll explain it in plain terms. When you buy a short-term rental investment property, you have what's called a cost segregation analysis performed on the property. And a cost segregation analysis is really just a more expensive, more in-depth, and kind of fancy appraisal that breaks out the different components of that property into different categories based on how long those fixtures and finishes are supposed to last. So things like flooring, landscaping, fencing, concrete driveways, things of that nature that do not last 20 years, but they last more like 5, 10, or 15 years. Those are segregated out. And then the total of those components of your home that don't last that long get added up, and that amount is your tax deduction for the first year. Now, I'm not a CPA, and I do advise you talk to one before you buy a short-term rental anywhere so that you understand the implications and all of the requirements to qualify for this tax benefit. But that said, I've done it myself, and so let's continue. Now, of course, none of this tax break matters if you can't operate the home you buy as a short-term rental. And in Sonoma County, there are a lot of restrictions. In fact, they've published a map that's a county-wide map that shows all of the areas where short-term rentals are prohibited, where they are capped but not necessarily restricted, and then also areas where there's still a lot of opportunity left. I'll link the map in the comments below so you can take a look for yourself. But that said, here's the basics. The municipalities, right, the cities in our county, most of them have already banned short-term rentals outright. So if you thought you'd buy a home in downtown Healdsburg or downtown Sebastopol or downtown Santa Rosa, and you could rent out something that's walkable to restaurants and town centers, that's not really an option anymore. But a lot of opportunity still exists in what's called unincorporated Sonoma County. And these are the areas that are more rural that surround the different cities in our county. The other piece of the puzzle is that zoning really matters. Some areas are zoned in a way that allow for short-term rentals. Other areas are not. And so there's a lot of layers here to figuring out exactly whether the house you're looking at qualifies for a short-term rental in the first place. And if you have questions about this or you're really thinking strongly, I encourage you to book a call with me and we can talk through exactly what you want to do and how to make it happen. So the opportunity in Sonoma County for this move as it stands today is you want to look in unincorporated Sonoma County. You want to be thoughtful about zoning and areas where there's a cap and whether that cap has been met. And you can do that on the map that I'm providing really quickly before you even visit the home. And so all of this, I'm sure, sounds really appealing. And if you have high income and you're paying a really high tax rate, this might be something that you've been thinking about for a while. Of course, if you buy $1 million home and you can write off 15 to 20% of the total value, that's a $150,000 to $200,000 tax break in year one. It's pretty attractive. But what's required to operate an Airbnb? Because one of the qualifications for the tax break is that you are materially participating in the operation and running of this business of yours. And in Sonoma County, there are 4 things you have to be granted a permit to run an Airbnb. First, you either have to hire a certified vacation property manager or you have to become one through the county's process. You or someone you know has to pass an exam that the county gives online to qualify for this title. Next, you need a transient vacation rental permit, which is a permit that requires a detailed site plan, a floor plan with all of the bedrooms that are designated on it, and then a plan for the septic to ensure there is enough septic capacity to accommodate the number of sleeping rooms in your home. Third, you need a transient occupancy tax number from the county assessor's office. And fourth, you need a vacation rental license, which has to be renewed each year and needs to be owned by a human being, a person, not an LLC or a corporation. That septic step is actually something that trips people up pretty regularly because the county will only allow you to rent the number of bedrooms that you have capacity for septic, if that's what you're buying. And most of these homes that are in unincorporated Sonoma County will be on septic. They're not part of a municipal sewer program. So you definitely want to understand what the septic capacity is because that will affect your bottom line because, of course, the number of bedrooms you rent is directly connected to how much you can charge per night for that house. And so what are the features that you should look for when you're shopping for your short-term rental here in Sonoma County? And in addition to all of the other qualifications that you have to have that property meet, there are some other more aesthetic things that you probably should consider when you're looking for your property. And the first is a view. View properties do command a premium, and I think, it makes sense. People are on vacation. They really want to wake up and have something beautiful to look at. They want to feel like they look out the window and they have a sense of the place that they've chosen to spend their vacation. And so a view property will help command rentals all year round, and it will also drive your nightly rate up so that you make more money over the course of a year than you would in a home with no view. Obviously, in the summer months, from about May until maybe mid-October, a pool is probably the number one thing that will drive your nightly rate. And it will really drive it because people pay a tremendous premium to come to Sonoma County, to be in the heat, especially if they're coming from the Bay Area where it's cool in the summer and they want to have a real summer experience. They will spend a pretty penny to rent a house for a week that has a beautiful pool. And so I would say you're not going to get your benefit from that pool all year round, but the benefit you do get from about mid-May through mid-October is worth it. Number 3 on the list of features is a hot tub. Now this is really the easiest one that you can add after your purchase. And so as long as there's a place for it and it's not too tricky to pour a cement pad for it or get power for the hot tub, I would say that's another thing I would highly recommend you incorporate into your Airbnb offering. And number 4 is privacy. And really, there are people that will rent Airbnbs at every price point, and privacy won't matter to them so much if they're spending less. But if you're trying to have an Airbnb where you're charging a real premium on your nightly fee, privacy is a big deal. Privacy in the home, people can't see in the home while they're walking around. Privacy in any exterior areas like around the pool deck or near the hot tub is really important as well. I think people who rent these homes are trying to get away from it all and they really don't want to feel like people are watching them on their vacation. And lastly, there's some other kind of aesthetic things that I think are really important to people when they're on vacation. Indoor-outdoor flow. You want to look for a property that has really good flow from the public rooms to the outside, maybe to a deck with a view. That kind of beauty and flow will really command a high price on your Airbnb rental. And even better, if that indoor-outdoor flow also includes some kind of room designated for play, maybe with a pool table or a ping pong table or even like a screening room. All of these things are really great for people, especially if they have families or big groups of people on vacation. And each of these features really adds to your ability to charge a premium on your nightly rate. So to recap, short-term rentals, not long-term rentals, help non-real estate professionals qualify for this tax loophole. And the tax loophole allows you to write off between about 15% up to 20% of the total home's value in year 1 of your ownership. In order to benefit from that tax break, you have to hire someone to perform what's called a cost segregation analysis on that property, which is just a fancy appraisal that breaks all of the components of the property out into different segments based on how long each of those components will last. The tax code has guidance for all of this, and real estate investors do this all the time. You do need to be careful in Sonoma County because not all properties qualify as a short-term rental. The short-term rental map for the county that's available online and in the comments below will be your friend. As soon as you find a property you're interested in, you should check that map first because that will tell you whether it even qualifies to become a short-term rental at all. Now, if you want help with all of this, because of course this is complex, there are a lot of steps and a lot of things to consider, I would be glad to be your guide. I'm Stephanie Johnson. I'm your RealWise agent here in Sonoma County, and it's easy to connect with me. You can book a call right from this page. Down below is a link to my calendar. You're welcome to book a call with me. Let's talk about your goal to buy a short-term rental here in Sonoma County in 2026. I would love to help you be successful. Until the next video, bye for now.